So restorative practices are a way of building culture and community within the school. And we use them both as proactive cultural measures and then also ways to come together when harm has been done in the community so that students can rebuild together. You know, this is part of our restorative practices work. I'm really grateful to have you all here for Circle today. We have taken on the practice of using restorative circles to, one, build a proactive community and culture where voice is honored, and when voice is honored, people feel a greater sense of belonging. The restorative circles were designed to manage also when there is harm done within the community. And so we set up these proactive, empathy building, speaking and listening circles so that when we do have a situation where harm is done or with tension in the community, that we can come together and we already understand how to be, how to speak, and how to listen from our hearts, and how to connect with each other's stories.
I wanted to pick myself.
So restorative practices are important primarily because student voice is at the center of the work, and we value student thinking, and we value the time it takes and the connection that students are able to make between experiences they have, their thoughts about those experiences, and their feelings about those experiences. At High Tech High, we are an integrated school community, so students come from all different backgrounds and experiences. And we believe that this is a great way to change the world because we want kids to understand not just their own life experiences, but the experiences of others, so that when they go into the world to make change, they come with a lot of knowledge about how people can be different and be wonderful in their difference. So being in a restorative circle gives students that opportunity to really understand with empathy. The proactive circle you'll see is an opportunity for us to connect as humans around a specific question, to share our thinking and our feelings about any specific question that digs into a student's experience. So when students think like this, it gives them a chance to really build empathy and to build their emotional intelligence. Additionally, being part of Circle is an opportunity for students to connect with others around their stories. First, when we build Circle, we set norms, and those are agreements that we have in Circle with everyone in the Circle around how we will interact. So our Circle today will have some standard norms around speaking from your truth and listening with heart. And then students also bring in agreements and norms that they value as part of the community. So we co-create norms for listening and speaking. What we're going to do is we're going to start out with our norms. And as a reminder, we want to make sure we support everyone through norms that keep us safe and respect each other. So our norms are over up on the whiteboard. Is there anyone who wants to volunteer to read one of the norms? And I'm going to pass the talking piece to you.
Speak from your heart, listen from your heart.
Great. Tell me, why don't you choose someone else to read another norm and pass it? There we go.
Keep this content in the circle. What is said in the circle stays in the circle.
Choose another person.
One person speaks at a time. Respect the talking piece.
Use respectful body language, eyes on the speaker, focused posture.
To have Circle today, a couple of things I want you to know. We're going to do one focus question today. And before we do that, though, we're going to do a quick meditation. So if you have students coming from lunchtime or something, that's an activity that's less structured, it's a good idea to start with a meditation, a short meditation, or a breathing exercise, just to get them set in a place of honoring and calm. Today. So we're going to do a breathing meditation together to start off, and it's the 5-finger Take 5 meditation. So what you do is you just hold your hand in your lap, and you're going to use your other hand. When we go up a finger, you're going to breathe in, and down a finger, you're going to breathe out. And I'll take you through this process together. And up, in, and down, out, and up, in, down, out. Last inhale, and out together. Great. Thanks everyone for taking that time to meditate. I really appreciate that everyone comes from different places, but meditation can get us started together. So I appreciate you being here and present. Another thing that's important is we sit in circle without anything in between us. Some restorative circles do build a centerpiece to the circle where every child brings something that is special to them to build their identity and the collective kind of presence to coming to circle. So that's an honoring activity that people will do in the beginning of setting the stage for circle. And then another important component of circle is the talking piece. And the talking piece is an item that students use and circle presenters hold when they are speaking. And the only person who speaks is the person holding the talking piece. This is our talking piece for today. I brought this as the facilitator because it's important to me. You know that I've played soccer since I was 6 years old, and it's a very important sport to me. It means a lot to me and my family and the culture that I grew up in. So I'm using this as our talking piece for today. So when it said respect the talking piece, whoever holds this is the person who's going to be the talker in that period of time. Okay? So can I get a thumbs up if everyone's cool with our norms today? Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay. There's always a facilitator of the circle. The facilitator can be an adult or it can be a student. Once we get to a place where all students have a common understanding of how we behave and how we interact in circle, then to progress, we might have students become facilitators of the circle. So to start off, we remind ourselves of the norms for circle, and then we engage in a question. So any question that would help us understand the thinking or feeling of a student. A circle question could be, how are you doing right now? 1 to 5, with 5 being awesome and 1 being really not so great. And then share why. Another question could be, name someone you admire and why. Okay, so the first question we're going to talk about is, who do you admire and why? We'll pass the talking piece around. If there's someone who really is feeling uncomfortable and just not ready to share, you might just share the name of the person you admire, but you might not be ready to share why. Or you might just, if you're really feeling uncomfortable, you can say pass and pass the talking piece through.
I admire my best friend Madden. He is a pretty good role model. He taught me a lot, and he is a big part of what I am today.
I admire my uncle because he graduated college, and I really want to graduate college.
I mean, I admire a lot of people, but someone I truly admire is my friend Eternity. She's always uplifting, always there for me, inspires me. She's like a better version of me.
I admire one of my older stepbrothers, Derek, because I feel like he's always so kind to me, even though I don't see him too much because he lives in a different state. I feel like every time I do see him, he's always trying to teach me something, a life lesson, and he's just overall great.
I appreciate my ama or mom because she worked really hard and getting her doctorate and master's, even though she had a full family at home.
The next thing that happens is we might ask the question, does anyone have any reflections or connections since the first go-round? And then we do another go-round if we have the time for that in circle. You notice there were some trends or connections. I'm wondering if we can do another go-round. Not everyone needs to speak, but I'm wondering, did you notice any connections or any reflections you have or anything else you want to add about who we admire or why someone might be admired? But the most important thing is that everyone in circle at least has one chance for sharing. So it really depends. You could have a 5-minute circle or you could have a 45-minute circle. To close circle, we might have a final go around. Is there anything anyone else would like to say before circle is closed? Or the facilitator might say we have a couple minutes left for circle before we close circle. And then we thank everyone for being there. We nod and give an agreement. Sometimes it depends. You might come up with something a little bit funny or fun that you pull together, like a pinky chain or something like that as like a connection and close. But that's really the teacher or the facilitator's decision based on the age of the children and kind of the space for circle. So if this is your first time doing circles and facilitating them, a couple of things to remember. As an adult, it's important that you come authentically as well, and that you're part of sharing in the circle. So always ask questions that you feel okay answering as well, because your answer is as important to the community as anyone else's. Someone I admire is my grandmother. We call her Ita, which is short for abuelita. I admire her because she's a strong Mexican-American woman in a time where it was really hard to be her. She managed 3 jobs. She lived in a home with a dirt floor, and she raised my dad, which wasn't always easy. So I admire my Ita. So sitting in circle where every person has an equal connection to the group is really important. The adult or the facilitator should be in a chair just like everyone else. To get really specific with some important pieces, all the chairs should be similar in the way they're facing, the way their height, because sitting in circle is a status treatment. Everyone comes with the same status. Everyone comes with a voice that matters. And sitting in circle shows that equity of voice and experience. Another thing is that when you answer, be prepared that you're going to speak from your heart and be a little vulnerable as the adult as well. Your vulnerability as an adult will show students that it's safe to be vulnerable as well. One challenge in circle can be that students are hesitant to share initially. So a tool that can help is called a pair share. So you ask the question of the group. We're going to look at the question, who do you admire and why? We're going to do a pair share, so you can share that with one person in the circle, and I'll pair you up. You two are going to be a pair. You two are going to be a pair. You two are a pair. You two are a pair. You two are a pair. You two. You two, you two, you two, and you and I are going to be paired. Cool? All right, so you'll take about 30 seconds to share with your partner, and I'll let you know when we're at halftime so you can switch if you haven't switched. Then all students will have an answer that they've already practiced once with one buddy before we send the talking piece around to share in the large circle. So that's another scaffold that can support making sure there's a safe space for sharing. In circle, big emotions do come up. Sometimes you'll have anxiety arise and you'll actually feel it in yourself. And I think it's important to name that to kids. This is so much about building the emotional intelligence capacity for our students. And so when we're able to name and share our metacognition, I was thinking this and feeling this, and I'm sharing this, and really share with them your truth. It helps students to be able to do the same, and it models for them what's acceptable. Sometimes also we'll have students who feel a little awkward being vulnerable, or they might feel awkward with something that comes up. You're modeling in the way you give attention or ignore like low-level issues and really give attention and honor the speaker is going to be important for your community setting. So an example is if you see a kid shifting around in their seat because something a little bit uncomfortable or on their edge of comfort comes up, that's okay to let it slide. But if you see kids start to have a conversation on the side with a partner, that's a time where you stop and pause and say, I want to pause and reconnect with our norms. And we stop, especially in the beginning, it's important to stop and can reconnect with norms to check ourselves around how we're doing with the norms. As a facilitator of Circle, it's really important to protect that so students feel safe sharing. If we ignore when another child is talking to another child out of term, that will send the message that what we said didn't really matter, or what the person who has the talking piece is saying isn't that important because other people are talking and we are allowing that. Having worked in traditional school systems and knowing the challenges of schedule and the many pressures of that are put on teachers in those situations, restorative practices can be used there too. And I think that doing proactive circles and building with students, where you start with a very simple practice of building a circle centerpiece and having everyone bring one thing to share that they want to be as part of the centerpiece. You put out a small blanket or even a little tablecloth in the center of circle and tell the students, okay, we're going to share one thing that's meaningful. That is your first circle activity. That is the first question. What is important to you? And bring that to circle. So you can start by having that as your first circle, and then we can keep that as the centerpiece for circles. So it primes the students when we put out the circle centerpiece, it brings them right back to this is a place where we're sharing, where we're listening. And then the next piece is that it can take 10 minutes, even with a group of 25 students, maybe even less, to go through a question of what we call empty the cup. How are you doing 1 to 5? Or what's your weather? Are you stormy? Is it sunshiny? And to share just at that level can take 5 minutes for a group, up to 10 minutes for a group. You can decide how deep you want to go by making sure that you give it students, if you want more time or more depth, that you give a second go round, any connections or reflections about what we heard. I think the best thing about restorative practices and circles in particular is when kids get to a point where they feel a tension or a challenge, they come to me and ask, can we have circle? It feels like such a strong structure when children are saying, we value this and we see that it works because we have proactive circles and we've set proactive circle experiences in our schools, coming together to deal with that in a higher stress space where there is a conflict, where there are a lot of emotions. Students are ready and they know how to behave. And the fact that they are, when they have done harm in our community, that their thoughts and their voices are critical to rebuilding, that they are responsible for the community and for rebuilding within the community, that ownership really is transformative around a whole culture for the way people interact. This restorative practices move us away from doing things to and for kids to doing things with our students in a way that is loving and caring and connected and reflective, where their voice and their thoughts are just as important as mine or any other adult in the space. And that's why we love restorative practices, and that's why we build them with our students on many different levels. And that's why I think why they ask for it when things come up.